Hey guys, Haynesworth92 here, and today I'm just going to do a quick NFL week recap of week 3. And so let's get started. All right, Vikings versus Panthers. I was very impressed by the Vikings. The Vikings are one of those teams that are emerging in the NFL as a true powerhouse and really has a chance to make a deep playoff run, unlike last year. The Vikings, I like their draft strategy in which they drafted a lot through offensive line and defensive linemen, defensive players in general, and have built up a team kind of similar to what the Seattle Seahawks did and how they got their Super Bowl in 2013. Now, the Panthers, I wasn't greatly appeased by it, even though Cam Newton had plenty of time. The Vikings need a pass rusher to talk mostly about. Cam Newton had plenty of time in the pocket, and he didn't really do much, so not a good game for Cam Newton. But I have to say, Trey Waynes is emerging as a top cornerback in this league. Is Broncos versus Bengals. Now the Broncos are emerging they're probably one of the best, or they maybe be the best team in the NFL right now. I was very appeased by Trevor Siemian's performance, and even though he dinks and dunks a lot, he did chuck the ball deep a lot of times, and I thought that was a good job on his part. Now it was the Bengals, so that's a little bit debatable. But when it comes to Andy Dalton, he has not changed a bit, and the Bengals, I don't think they might not make the playoffs this year. I know they won last night and all that, but hey, never know. Texans, Patriots, I have to say this was just a great coaching day for Bill Belichick and a terrible day for the Texans. The only player that did well on their last Thursday night football game was DeAndre Hopkins. J.J. Watt was not a factor because they double-teamed him all day, and they still got some pressure on Jacoby Brissett, well-respected because the Patriots don't have a very good old line, so they did their job. But overall, it was just a coaching duel. And for Bill O'Brien, who's emerging as coach, this is a real wake-up call for the Texans. Falcons Saints. Sean Payton will probably be fired after this season and then probably become the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, or hell, he might just get another head coaching job. Now, another thing about the Saints is Drew Brees, he's just all about the stats, really. And I'm not saying he doesn't want to win, but ideally he's just a quarterback that puts up great numbers. I'm not sure he can really truly be he really needs a lot around him to have some success in the NFL. And when it comes to the Falcons, they're just a really bad team that can just score a lot of points. I was right there. But basically, the Falcons have a terrible pass rush. Through 3 weeks, they got 1 sack. 3 sacks, I mean. And one of them was by Desmond Trufant, a cornerback. Okay, that's pathetic. Falcons, they have a chance to make the playoffs, but they're probably going to be one of those teams that a lot of people are going to like to watch, but they're going to get slaughtered in probably one of the first weekends of playoff football. Giants, Redskins, I thought Eli Manning obviously had a poorly job day, and the Redskins still have a lot of holes on their both sides of the ball, and I think they will need to improve that. And if they think they're serious about playoff push, they're going to have to make some serious trades. Now, to really talk about this is the big highlight was the Odell versus Norman game, and I thought Odell did well, but I'm still not changing my my opinion on Odell Beckham Jr. because, I don't know, I was just looking at that game and I was looking at some of the plays that he made. There were some that he made that were quite decent, but Norman basically kept them pretty well contained. I mean, he didn't get a single touchdown all game long, and there was a couple big plays that Odell made. Good job on Odell's part, but even though I would say Odell won the matchup, I'm still not convinced. Raiders versus Titans. Now, I look at the Titans, I look at Marcus Mariota, and to be honest, I don't think he's really going to progress as a quarterback. He's going to be a fan favorite. A lot of people are going to like him, respectively, but at the same time, though, he might not move anywhere in the NFL. Now, when it comes to the Raiders, their secondary, I think, is garbage. They can't cover anyone. Yes, they can get picks, but that's not a big deal. And then when you look at them, I think of the Raiders as a team that will probably beat the bad ones, but when it comes to the good ones, and they do make the playoffs, they're going to be roasted. Jaguars, I look at the Jaguars, and I think Gus Bradley needs to be fired. In his first couple of years, he did not have that much talent. Now he has the talent, and he's not producing. He's already 0-3 of the season. Now, I look at the Jaguars, when they invested a lot of money and a lot of picks into the draft, and they're still underperforming. They can't deliver a simple pass rush. I'm sorry. And by the way, Steve Smith is still infected for his age, even after the injury. That's pretty damn good. Browns, Dolphins. The Browns have talent, definitely in the skill. They're like Terrell Pryor was very impressive in that game. But overall, I thought Hugh Jackson was alright coach. Like you can only get so creative. An example, Chip Kelly, and look how he turned out. Now, when you look at the Browns, they don't, I don't know, their defense, they still need a lot more on that defense. And for a couple of years ago, they did have a defensive force, but now it feels like it's all just vanished. The Dolphins, it's a pretty good skill set on the wide receiver. I thought a JG, or whatever the running back's name is, but I thought he did a pretty good job. I looked at Jarvis Landry, and he's emerging as a top 10 wide receiver in this league. And so I have been impressed with some of the skill set, but other than that, the Dolphins are still the Dolphins. Press talk, and I look at them as the future, and I think this will be a trade for Tony Romo will come and I don't think Tony Romo or Jay Cutler will be on their teams next year. Now, when you look at some of the Bears just, even though they talked about the injuries, they're still not good. On the defensive side of the ball, yes, they have injuries, but offensively, all they have is Alshon Jeffrey, and they do have a second wide receiver in Kevin White that they can't develop. Jay Cutler has the talent, can't produce, and they have players that possibly can do it, but they haven't producing. And I'm thinking that Tony Romo will probably get traded to the Browns. Chargers, Colts. I look at the Colts, and I think they can be a serious threat later on the season. They have to get their act together, and this was a must-win for them. When I look at the Colts' offensive line, they have a very improved offensive line. I think they have 3 at least legit offensive linemen, maybe 4, and hell, that's good enough for me. And I look at them, and that can really be the big difference right there from basically making a deep playoff run. Now, when I look at the Chargers, they have an improved pass rush. Phillip Rivers is still Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has always been good, but hey, not super impressive. But other than that, though, the Colts will probably make a bigger impact later on in the season. Steelers, Eagles. Now, even though I thought the Steelers could have done a little bit better what they did against the Eagles, I look at the Eagles, and I think that Malcolm Jenkins is probably the best safety in the NFL currently right now. And hell, with J.J. Watt's injury, I think Fletcher Cox is one of the best the interior pass rushers in the NFL right now. I think I am very appeased by the Eagles' defense. I think they have one of the 2 best players at a position, which could really make them a real defense. And hell, look at Vin Curry, Brandon Graham, very underrated in the previous years because of the failures of Chip Kelly, but it looks improved. Now, when I look to the Steelers, they got dominated by the Eagles' pass rush, but the Eagles did something well. Carson Wentz, so far so good. He has stayed consistent, but hey, look at Mark Sanchez. He won his first 3 games, and he beat the Patriots, but hey, look at how he turned out. He is currently now a backup that keeps on. He's now a journeyman in the NFL. Now, overall, I look at the Eagles, and they could be a serious threat in the later future, maybe in the long term, because they do have Malcolm Jenkins and Fletcher Cox, and he just got a huge contract, and he's producing with that huge contract, and now you got a young quarterback in Carson Wentz. So, in the next 5 years, they can be a real threat in the NFC. 49ers, Seahawks, I look at the 49ers, very passive offensive game. Obviously, they can't really do much with Blaine Gabbert, so they're going to make some massive changes with Chip Kelly, I think, when they hopefully, maybe by next season. And obviously the 49ers defensively, a good front 7, terrible secondary, so it can get eaten up like that. But when I look at the Seahawks, I think they will do fine without Russell Wilson. And they will probably beat the Jets easily. But when I also look at that, I look at Russell Wilson, really hasn't progressed that much. But the one guy, if you're watching 49ers right now, the one guy you should definitely be looking at is Carlos Hyde. He will emerge as a running back. I said it last video, and I'll say it again. Carlos Hyde looks like the second coming of Brandon Jacobs. So he's going to be a fun player to watch, people. Keep an eye on him. I look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, extremely vulnerable to the pass rush right there. I think what Todd Bowles needs to do, he needs to run more West Coast style system where he needs to do first progression, makes the throws right there, and he'll probably use to the Seahawks this week. But when I also look at that, I look at how they need the Chiefs. I don't think they're as good as last year. They're not going to make an insane run right now because, I don't know, they haven't really been all that impressive, and they just lost to the Houston Texans, a team that they easily beat in the playoffs last year. Now they just lost to them, so that can be some serious concern right there. The Detroit Lions have basically officially have lost their pass rush in the Lions versus Packers game. Now, obviously, the Lions did put up a lot of garbage time points, but hey, that doesn't really matter. And I look at the Lions, and honestly, that Darius Slay, but hey, he can only do so much when your pass rush is that bad. I'm sorry. But I look at the Packers. They don't really have good starting depth. On the front seven, you can argue yes, but when it comes to the secondary, there are some holes there, and they are very exploitable. I think he's emerging definitely as a quarterback. He's definitely going to be silent. And I think he's going to be like what the Chiefs were last year, about a team that just basically silently just won 10 games in a row, something insane like that. But other than that, I mean, I look at the Buccaneers, and they do not have a secondary, really that much of a secondary. They made some improvements I think during the draft they tried to hype them up, but it doesn't look like that. Now look at the Rams right now. They really need to start Jared Goff. I'm sorry, Case Keenum. You're considered one of the better backups of the NFL last year. Please, when you look at that stick pattern right there, and you threw that intercept, that was almost embarrassing right there. Now, obviously, it was made by it was a good play by the defense, but other than that, though, it's all that. And Jeff Fisher, I'm sorry, he is an overrated coach. I really want to talk about the Bills right now because I look at Rex Ryan and he's now developing pass rush. Last year, for a guy who was a pass rush D that took up a team, he only got 22 sacks. He had Mario Williams, who was one of the best pass rushers. He's kind of declined now. But he had Marcel Darius, Kyle Williams. He had a stacked team, and now they weren't getting sacks. Now he's got sacks, and that's what he needs to do. He was getting them. And if the Bills need to progress offensively, it needs to be through Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor needs to do a little bit more on that offense. And you know what? The Bills can be maybe a serious threat. And hell, maybe Rex Brown will keep his job next year. Now, when I look at the Cardinals, I look at Carson Palmer. He throws way too many games. I'm sorry. For a guy who's considered to be a perfectionist, you do not throw the triple coverage against one wide receiver. He has very good targets on that Cardinals offense, and he's just eyeballing one guy. And I feel like if there's three defenders to one side, there's got to be like four on the line right there. So there's four other guys spread out with many different weapons. Target those. Don't go to the triple coverage. Carson Palmer, you are overrated. What I did about it. And thanks for watching, and I'll make a video tomorrow. Peace.